Hey, what's up and how's it going, everyone? Well, I'm so glad that you have took your time to spend with me right here today on the MRB Wrestling Review Show. I'm your co-host, Mike McRock Wilson, and last night was TNA Impact Wrestling. The show kicked off when the main event Mafia come out, and I like how each individual of the four guys had their share on the microphone. And, we usually don't get to see that on the show, so the show kicked off pretty well, I thought. And it was a well thought up, well segmented promo speech until all hell break loose. What happened was that Sting got on the microphone and he delivered a really good promo, talking about his sense of entitlement to Dixie Carter. And, throughout his career, he didn't take shortcuts. He was raised the right way in the business of not taking shortcuts, always taking the long road. So I like this cause Sting is on right now on the show. And then he announced that the main event Mafia is going to split. They're going in different directions. And what I like about that is that it don't play on the cliche of a group imploding and they break up. So I thought that was an interesting way to break up a group, having it announced by the leader, Sting. And with that being said, when Samoa Joe got on the microphone, he talked about him wanting to win this tournament to determine a new World Heavyweight Champion. And Magnus got on the microphone as well. He got a few boos, but overall, I like how he got his point across. And usually when someone gets boos, that's a signal where the TNA management should listen to the fans and think, I wonder how he would do as a good heel. Because, he is in a suit. He did have some moments where his facial expressions had some sort of smirk on his face. It's just the little things that, were coming off from Magnus that I got off on. That I got from Magnus. So with that being said, I like to see where they're going to push Magnus in the direction that he's going to go in the future. And when they got to Kurt Angle, when he stated his the statement on the microphone, he was going to give a update about his condition, and I like that he never got to it because Bobby Roode came out and interrupted Kurt Angle, and this rivalry is really amazing and it's really boiling over. These two guys just really hate each other's guts, and it works. All hell broke loose. Two of them just going at it. And you had all these reps and guys in the management trying to separate them. You had Kaz and Daniels trying to separate Bobby Roode. And you had Magnus and a bunch of other people trying to push Kurt Angle away from Roode. And I like this rivalry that's going on between Bobby Roode and Kurt Angle. Like I said, these two are boiling, hating each other, and it works. And they played on the Hall of Fame speeches, and it works very well. They played on Kurt Angle's condition, which he never got to. I like that he never got to say what his update about his condition, because it leaves that opening for that storyline to continue. And I don't know if we're ever going to get that update from Kurt Angle. I like how it's left open, and the right way to go is probably leave it open, just to pull that audience in to tune in to see if we're ever going to get an update in the weeks to come, going into this potential big time match between Kurt Angle and Bobby Roode, which will probably happen at the pay-per-view. And I got a really good theory about this tournament and what it means for Kurt Angle and Bobby Roode, which I will get to later on in this review. And also, what happened shortly after, we saw Kaz and Daniels outside the ring and they were arguing with Adam Pac-Man Jones, who was at ringside, where Dixie Carter announced that he will be there, basically trolling the audience. And okay, and everyone was probably going to be skeptical about it. I was skeptical about it going into this episode, but it actually turned out pretty well, because what happened was that we saw Kaz and Daniels arguing with Adam Pac-Man Jones and a couple of his friends until they got involved, and all four of them were in the ring, and we saw Adam Pac-Man Jones and his friend deliver those fisherman suplexes in sync with each other that they laid out on Kaz and Daniels, and the fans absolutely loved it. It was incredible. Really, Kaz and Daniels were the best people to put in that situation, because the fans, it was their hometown, and the fans loved it. It was a win-win situation on everyone involved. Also, we saw a triple threat match, and the winner will become the number one contender for the Knockouts Championship. It was ODB versus Brooke and Velvet Sky. And what happened was that the match went to a no contest. And because Lady Tapa just cleaned house, there was a stare down between her and ODB, which is kind of interesting. I like to see a potential rivalry between the two, where Lady Tapa can benefit from it and probably have her go over ODB. I think that could be a direction that they might go with her, just to show her dominance of how big she is. She is bigger than basically all the knockouts on TNA, so they should show it on the show. So with that being said, I like to see if they could leave this separate for what Gail Kim said afterwards. Gail Kim said that there's no competition left for her, and she issues an open challenge to anyone outside of the company. And here I'm thinking, okay, who's a good knockout to face Gail Kim? Who's going to be the one to step up to Gail Kim and face her and potentially get a shot at her title? I have really no options. Actually, I do have a theory on that. Mischief from Ring of Honor. I think what TNA needs right now is someone in the Knockouts division to make it feel like it was the old division of the Knockouts years ago in TNA, and Mischief is a good example of that, because TNA had Daphne, and that character with that gothic image worked on the show. And I think that's an element that the Knockouts division needs, is someone like Mischief who would really fit in the division on TNA in the Knockouts division. I gotta go with her. She'll be the one to answer Gail Kim's challenge. I don't know. What do you think? Comment below. Let me know. And, let's just see what happens next week. Also, we saw AJ Styles. We saw a little bit of a promo from AJ Styles defending his championship in Mexico. I love it. It shows that AJ Styles is promoting TNA in a way. Even though this is a storyline where AJ Styles is going to be off, let it drag out for a few months and have him come back on the show where he stares down the next champion after the tournament, something like that, where they both raise their titles. I don't know. I just thought of that because WWE done it, so I think that it's inevitable that TNA is probably going to do the same thing. And with that being said, I like that AJ is doing this, because it shows that AJ Styles is also promoting TNA in other independent companies like Mexico. He can go to Ring of Honor and defend that championship, and I'll enjoy it. And even New Japan Pro Wrestling, even though I don't get New Japan Pro Wrestling, I would love to see AJ Styles to see what he's going to do to defend the championship in any indie promotion. to promote the company. And I think that, it also helps pave the way for future stars to be involved in matches with AJ to see what their gut check might be in hopes to get a contract on TNA. It's a good possibility that could happen as well. So we'll see what happens in that department. But other than that, hopefully this thing with AJ continues for another few months until he makes his big return on TNA. Also on the show, we saw Ethan Carter III go one-on-one with Dewey Barnes again. And I think that if Ethan Carter continues these jobber matches, he's just not going to go anywhere. So eventually, they're going to have to build Ethan Carter up and put him in the ring with superstars, wrestlers that are on TNA full time. And it's a wonder that Dewey Barnes is not as well. I think if Dewey Barnes actually gains some weight and builds some muscle mass, he could be a credible X Division superstar and become a future X Division champion. And the fans seem behind him for that reason. And I like how in that match they kind of mix it up a bit. They had, Ethan Carter counter the drop kick instead of him nailing the drop kick and then going for his finisher, which Dewey Barnes sold once again. Just absolutely amazing, channeling his inner Rob Van Dam and making him look good as well. And I think it's working. And when you have something working, you have to capitalize on it. So hopefully TNA does capitalize on this Dewey Barnes character. And what was Ethan Carter wearing? It was really glimmer-like trunks. It really stuck out. I don't know. That just felt a little weird. I think he should change his attire because it kind of was just hard on the eyes. Just don't wear that stuff. Wear something shiny, but not something that just hurts my eyes. That's the only nitpicking thing I didn't like about Ethan Carter. But with that being said, hopefully something happens with Ethan Carter. And if there's going to be another jobber match next week, and the week after that, eventually the audience is going to tune out, and you need to keep the character interesting. And what I like about Ethan Carter 30 is that he does come off as very annoying, and it works because you have to have that annoying superstar you like to see on the show. Also, we saw Bobby Roode coming out and just being frustrated, mad, and etc., trying to call out Kurt Angle after Kurt Angle waited all day for Bobby Roode to come out. And there's this whole back and forth rivalry between Bobby Roode and Kurt Angle. We got to see those two superstars, the most on the show, and I absolutely loved it. There was never a dull moment on that show. And what happened was that Angle come out once again, and he called out Bobby Roode just before the main event happened. And what I really liked about that is that he got Austin Aries instead. So, there's a tease there. You think Bobby Roode's going to come out and attack Kurt Angle. He gets Austin Aries. I like that little tease. And there was words exchanged between Austin Aries and Kurt Angle. Austin Aries makes me believe that he will actually beat Kurt Angle. I think next week their submission match, which was the Wheel of Dixie, the thing came on. It's going to be a submission match. Next week, those two are going to put on a clinic. Without a doubt, this is the match where the fans win. And it don't matter if Kurt Angle or Austin Aries wins. The fans are going to win that match. Absolutely. Those two are going to put on a clinic next week. And with that being said, that was a well thought up storyline that they're going with Kurt Angle and Bobby Roode. And those two were just going at it. Let them fight. Let them fight. Let them fight. And they should have let them fight. and I wouldn't be bored for 1 second. And that's basically what happened on the show. And it was I'm looking forward to this match. And here's the interesting theory that I have going into this tournament. I don't see Kurt Angle and Bobby Roode actually winning, because they could use this tournament to build even more on the rivalry, have Bobby Roode cost Kurt Angle his tournament match, and have the vice versa happen to build up that story. And with that being said, Magnus is the guy that I think has the most potential of winning this tournament, but also Austin Aries as well. Austin Aries is probably the best choice to win, because I would love to see him face AJ Styles when he comes back in a champion versus the champion. Winner becomes the champion. Austin Aries, AJ Styles 3, make it happen. That's all I gotta say about that. Also on the show, we saw, Aces and Eights. Now we saw them backstage throughout, and we saw Aces and Eights backstage with both Anderson and Bully Ray, and they're going to have a club vote based on the decision of the future of Aces and Eights. It was a really good setup of a plan on the part of Bully Ray. And what happened was that Taz was in the ring, Knox, Garrett, Bully, and Anderson was outside, and he was loving every second of it, of Knox, Bischoff, and Taz, all taking off their colors and making Anderson believe that they're out of Aces and Eights, only to have that swerve to have all three of them, well, two of them, Knox and Bischoff, attack Anderson from behind. And I like how Bully Ray referenced the Stone Cold "Don't Trust Anyone" phrase, because it worked in that segment, even though they shouldn't reference stuff from the other company. I like that he did, because it's so true. You don't trust anyone when it comes to any wrestling program, whether it's WWE or TNA. It's just one of those cliche things. But the interesting thing is, Bully Ray has the capability of throwing swerves to the audience and make people hate him. And that was what I got out of that segment as well. Bully Ray, his plan absolutely worked, and the fans just took the heat on Bully Ray, and it worked. And going back to that segment where Austin Aries and Kurt Angle and Bobby Roode were, I didn't mention this when I was talking about before, but I'll mention it now. When Bobby Roode and Kurt Angle were going at it, Austin Aries was getting involved in their little rivalry as well. And the only nitpicking thing I didn't like was that I would rather see Austin Aries let Bobby Roode and Kurt Angle fight to wear themselves out for next week, So I thought that was a little out of character out of Austin Aries. But with that being said, I would rather see Austin Aries have him fight and have him have that match with Kurt Angle. I don't know. I thought that was a little off, but overall it worked. Usually I don't like to see a superstar involved in the rivalry between two guys, and just really doesn't mesh well. And so, it kind of did come off a little weird. Austin Aries being in the middle of that Bobby Roode and Kurt Angle exchange. But with that being said, like I said, this rivalry with Kurt Angle and Bobby Roode is working, and keep it going for weeks to come, until we have a good definitive ending where Kurt Angle will probably go over Bobby Roode anyway. It's inevitable, it's predictable, but I like to see unpredictability happen when this rivalry does come to a close. let's just see what happens in weeks to come on TNA. The main event was Jeff Hardy versus Chris Sabin in the Full Metal Mayhem match. And going into this, I was thinking, well, there's only 10 minutes left to the show. So it kind of felt like, okay, what can we do in 10 minutes to cram this match together? But you know what? It didn't feel like that. I thought it was going to be a rush match where we're going to throw this in, we're going to throw this in, we're going to throw this in, tables, ladders, chairs, trash cans, and we'll do all that we can in this 7 to 10 minute match. But you know what? It didn't feel rushed at all. It felt really good, and it had a really good flow. There were a lot of great moments throughout that main event where Jeff Hardy just whipped that trash can onto Chris Sabin's head. That just looked like, whoa, like that was really good. And that swanton from the ladder onto Chris Sabin, absolutely incredible. That match was just absolutely amazing. It was a good way to end that show. And from the first segment as well, it was a good way to kick off the show. When you have a good segment to kick off the show and a good match and segment to end the show, you have a great show. And that's what that was. There was no really disappointing outcomes that I didn't like. So with that being said, it's a good solid 9 out of 10 for me on this episode of TNA. And that was my review of last night's show. For the MRB Wrestling Review Show, I'm your co-host Mike McRock Wilson. Get plenty of rest and always do your best.